Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin my presentation, Creative and Critical Thinking and Ways to Achieve It, I must express deepest gratitude to you all at the prestigious University of Nairobi for giving me this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Also, I offer my sincerest respect for the numerous critical thinking, creative presenters who have come from far and wide. Thank you all. I am honored to be among you. So to begin, when I reflected on critical thinking, I thought of Socrates and his pedagogical tool called the Socratic method or dialectics. I'd like to explore what two exceptional Kenyan women might have in common with a Greek philosopher. Then I'll discuss related topics such as dialogue and creative and critical thinking in our hyper-connected 21st century. According to Wikipedia, dialectics is a form of cooperative, argumentative dialogue based on question and answers to stimulate critical thinking, improve the soul of one's interlocutors, and develop their spirit of inquiry. I take this to mean Socrates wanted to nurture autonomous people with integrity who could think for themselves. I think we can also find dialectics in artistic expression, including literature. Let's start with the traditional tribal story Grace Ogot, finally published with the title The Rain Came. Apparently, her decision to write was inspired by a disappointment while attending a 1962 African Literature Conference at Makerere University and not finding any East Asian works on display. As we know, she went on to have a long career of writing and political engagement, so this shows she was someone who dared challenge the status quo. The Rain Came style is interesting because it seems to me an intercultural dialogue through the art form of storytelling. First of all, she's recounting it in English and not Swahili or another African language, and also through the prism of her other cultural influences, which included Western ones. Ogot masterfully connects Occidental and Kenyan Luo cultures through a tale of a young woman to be sacrificed by her tribal chief father under difficult climatic conditions for the tribe, and according to ancient traditions. I think Ogot avoids pure logic or Western-style reason, even though she seems equally desirous of having the reader reflect on human rights issues. Above all, I feel she wants the reader to understand the emotions of the characters involved and to experience empathy. Impressive. Is this not the kind of intercultural dialogue we need for critical thinking in our globalized society? Moving on, and without changing the country, let's change the context a little. The great Wangari Maathai demonstrated successful movements are created by a multitude of interconnections. She also had courage to pose difficult questions while carefully analyzing complex situations. As we know now, Maathai took action in the face of resistance, as she recounts in her book, The Challenge for Africa. I quote, "The world's interactions with Africa are not necessarily motivated by altruism, but by the self-interest of states seeking to maximize their opportunities and minimize their costs, often at the expense of those who are not in a position to do either." Unquote. A courageous, true statement from an independent spirit. Here is a powerful quote from her Nobel acceptance speech. "We are called to assist the earth to heal her wounds and in the process heal our own. Indeed, to embrace the whole of creation in all its diversity, beauty, and wonder, recognizing that sustainable development, democracy, and peace are indivisible is an idea whose time has come." Unquote. Maathai's perceptive comments hit me hard, echoing similar descriptions from Swiss former UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Jean Ziegler, in his intense biographical work, The Happiness of Being Swiss, which I have recently completed. Readers of French will discover what he calls structural violence, and like the two women I just cited, you'll discover analysis, perception, and critical thinking. By the way, one of his few books in English that I found is Betting on Famine, Why the World Still Goes Hungry. As for Maathai, her slogan, Harambee, which is Swahili for "let's all pull together," is a powerful sort of soft power. I'd like to propose it become major inspiration for certain Western cultures which are profoundly individualistic and which therefore have difficulty building authentic solidarity. So, what are enemies of critical thinking? I'd say the biggest enemy is binary thinking, the approach which sees people and ideas in polarities, right versus wrong, us versus them, or black versus white without the myriad nuanced shades in between. On the contrary, true critical thinking searches for truth and learning, is flexible and courageous. Matai, Ogat, and Socrates weren't dogmatics because they saw themselves as inside a community more than inside some kind of abstract mental truths. And they knew that there was no such thing as 100% good or 100% bad people. On the other hand, binary thinking actively creates animosity and violence. An example is the infamous quote by former U.S. President G.W. Bush, "You're either with us or against us," as he launched his anti-terrorism campaign after the September 11, 2001 attack, resist manipulation. In a recently published book, which I'll unofficially translate as "A School Without Walls is a School That Connects," there is a compilation of essays. There, Rikio Kimata from Soka University, Japan, focuses precisely on Makiguchi's ideas about lifelong learning. Kimata describes what motivated Makiguchi, and this was the worsening social situation of the 1920s, when Japanese youth had difficulty integrating school and finding work. Makiguchi insisted that the school system responded in no way to the needs of the population, so the most logical solution for him was having learning possibilities throughout one's lifetime, together with the possibility of finding out early on what constitutes life and work outside the school for half of each school day. In the introduction, Véronique Bois from Paris University 8 evokes the importance of learning skills for self-teaching, for a future which sees change at an ever-rapid pace. This, I believe, makes strong arguments for universally accepted MOOC-style lessons for all. And Nicole Blandu's essay titled "Literature as Access to the World" also resonates with us today. I'll quote using my translation of that. "Literature can be a window on the world. In other words, a means of diversified social, cultural, historical, ecological, and environmental knowledge of others. All literary persons are convinced of this." Unquote. Now, changing gears a bit, let's put ourselves in Socrates' linguistic context. The etymological roots of dialogue come from the Greek words dia and logos, with dia meaning through and logos translating as word or meaning. I interpret this, therefore, as the process whereby the meaning of something is communicated through words or language. Stated another way, language is a tool often born from intangibles like ideas, concepts, or feelings. So Socrates understood words as being symbols. In addition, he knew critical thinking couldn't happen in a vacuum. So to aid his students go into their thought processes, he believed they needed guided or rhetorical questions and engaging discussions in a cooperative atmosphere. These were not just debates for the sake of debates, or for winning, or an argument just for being right. The absolute focus was on authentic development of the student, and the understanding would occur in stages, finally coming from inside the students themselves. Socrates' disciple Plato used a written form of dialogue in his famous Republic. It's an example of how to bring readers step by step to seeing things from the writer's perspective. Now, what are some activities which could promote critical and creative thinking? I propose 4 approaches here, particularly for our youthful friends. The first one, get engaged in existing structures like those listed above, or make your own. Also, don't hesitate to think on the large scale. One example is UNAI, United Nations Academic Impact. This is an integral part of the 17 UN SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals movement. The second one, take MOOCs classes online. These massive open online courses are offered more and more, including on platforms through universities such as Harvard and Columbia. Thanks to these learning opportunities, which are often free, as long as we have internet connections, we can learn throughout our lifetimes. The third one, watch TED Talk conferences, debate and discuss with others, or write papers, pro and con. The subjects in TED conferences, such as that of Sir Ken Robinson on changing education paradigms, lend themselves nicely to practicing critiques. And my last one, number 4, seek the universal. I'll take a moment to explain. What follows is my translation of an extract from The Malady of Islam, written in response to the September 11, 2001 attack by the late Franco-Tunisian Abdelwahab Meddeb. He wrote, "We need to have an integration of Islamic heritage at the source of thought and creation as much as we use the sources of Greek, Latin, Hebraic, Japanese, Chinese, and Indian. It would be a supplementary gauge for constituting the common stage, which should be that of a world culture, where the products would be works of the spirit, situated above and beyond the traditions, without interrupting the dialogues between them." Mr. Meddepp continues, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was already persuaded in his epoch that a world literature, what he called Weltliteratur, was in the process of being born, and further, it was necessary to hasten its arrival. In chapter 9, titled Africa on the Rise, from a dialogue with Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, titled Reaching Beyond, Daisaku Ikeda says, "Africa is the spiritual home of jazz and the cradle of humanity. I have long declared that the 21st century will be the century of Africa, and I have promoted increased exchange with the continent. The 21st century cannot be prosperous unless humanity's place of origin prospers." Dr. Ikeda concluded this section by saying, "The African continent has seen greater suffering and hardship than any other. Those who suffer the greatest deserve to enjoy the greatest happiness." Not long after the 2015 terrorist attacks in the Paris concert hall Bataclan, Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter penned their open letter to the next generation of artists. I'll share the last part, which I find inspiring. Point 10 is, "We hope that you will live in a state of constant wonder. Whether from sadness, prolonged struggle, or social conditioning, somewhere along the way, people forget how to tap into the inherent magic that exists within our minds. Don't let that part of your imagination fade away. Look up at the stars and imagine what it would be like to be an astronaut. All that exists is a product of someone's imagination. Treasure and nurture yours, and you'll always find yourself on the precipice of discovery. Be the leaders in the movie of your life. You are the director, producer, and actor. Be bold and tirelessly compassionate as you dance through the voyage that is this lifetime." I'd like to take my lead with some words on our common humanity. The youth of Africa have a unique mission to lead the rest of the planet to peace, together with youth everywhere. I sincerely hope this extract from a poem from the 1990s, written by Dr. Ikeda just after the Los Angeles, California race riots, will provide you with inspiration. As each group seeks its separate roots and origins, society fractures along 1,000 fissure lines. When neighbors distance themselves from neighbors, continue on your uncompromising quest for your truer roots in the deepest regions of your life. Seek out the primordial roots of humankind. Thank you so much for listening.